arrived at the first speaker of the evening. I want you guys to give a hand of applause for Thomas. Besides being a good friend, he's also a designer, researcher. He's now currently doing a master at the game technology at the NSTV, and he's done some awesome stuff on Atom. That was like an IGF finalist. Research stuff for kite papers, you name it. He has interesting stuff to tell. So give it up for him.
Hello everyone, good to be back around here. Most of you knew that I was in Denmark, but back now. So I basically made this presentation in like 10 minutes, so bear with me, it may not be perfect. It's hacked together from several other presentations of what I've been doing the last year or so. And the most important thing here is that it's based on my graduation research project and some conferences that I've been to in generative methods for designing things, so not just general procedurally generating things, but also procedurally designing things, so the concept stage being the automated part, not just the content. So one of the things that you'll notice is cards, which is one thing that we use a lot in prototyping, is actually a very abstract thing. It has some information on the card itself, which makes it a playable object. Often this is called a component by Staff and Bjork, one of the things that I criticize in my graduation paper. The cards are not actually components, they are carriers of components, and I'll explain that a bit further later on. So everyone knows that thing. And we all know that it has certain criteria. It can do certain attributes. It can move, it can take another pawn. It has basic rules, basic systems in place, and we identify this by the shape that we call the pawn. The thing is that a card is pretty much the same thing. It's just a set of identifiers composed on a card that we give a name, and then it is an identifier. It's the exact same thing as a pawn. Yeah, they are completely different games. One is a card game, the other is a board game. So what is Street Fighter then? Is that the exact same thing? Is Ryu not just a pawn with a set of moves that we can predefine or already generate? I mean, it's not that difficult. We can just throw in a database of predefined moves and generate a character. It's been done before. Why aren't we massively doing this? Why are we spending hours and hours creating a character and then giving it a moveset afterwards? Why are we not just generating a moveset and then slapping a character on top that fits the moveset? It saves a lot of time if you do it the other way around, but we don't. And this is largely because we don't think in terms of database designing. We think about a soldier, and we think then about what can this soldier do, what does this soldier have. We think about a soldier that has a weapon. We have a soldier that can move, can jump, can throw a grenade, can reload his weapon. We don't think about the mechanics first, we think about the way it's presented in the game first. That leads to a finite amount of things that we can draw reference from in real life situations. If I think about a car, all my limitations are set to what can a car do, and maybe I can attach wings to it and then I upgrade the concept of a car slightly. However, if we work from things like the 400 project, if you don't know what it is, Google it, it's amazing. It's a database filled with all kinds of designers like Jesse Shell and all kinds of big names that are compiling every possible game mechanic out there into one giant database. Stuff like that, for me, who likes generating stuff because I'm lazy, is a great resource. If I hook up a generating tool and go, all right, give me X random mechanics and attach them to a single entity, I get a new card. Or in this case, well, as I already explained, the card is everything. So I can make a fighting game character, a racing car, a whatever character by just generating mechanics. So as you have a soldier and you think about the soldier first, you get something like this in terms of mechanics: walking, running, jumping, shooting, etc. Well, something like this happens if you do really, really crazy thinking, but we already find this extreme, but if you take the other way, you think about mechanics first and just start adding them, you can get even more complex things that we as human designers would never think of, whilst a machine doesn't discriminate into that doesn't make sense, because making sense is, in a virtual space, making sense is not relevant. We can make whatever we want. So why are we limiting ourselves to the concept of what already exists, what we have a frame of reference to? Yes, obviously there are issues with readability, but we can also teach readability. A pawn itself is not a very clear shape in what it should be able to do. Nothing about the shape of a pawn intuitively tells me that the movement is one space forward or two spaces forward in certain criteria. These rules are taught, so we can also teach players different concepts. And what the future of this is, where we are right now, is that we can generate a lot of content, and we do this all the time to save money, to create new things that we didn't see before. However, if we go one step further, where we start generating things like entire worlds with narrative structures, some things that are happening at University of Amsterdam is perceivably generating an entire campaign world for a MMO, where they make a 2D map, place all kinds of cities on it, and then afterwards they start populating the cities with individual character seeds and make relationships between these people, and then say, well, these people apparently don't like each other as much because the data says so, and then apparently they're at war. We didn't actually touch anything, we just generated a world by saying these parameters create worlds. Saves us a lot of time, we didn't actually do anything. In 5 minutes I have the game world. Whilst if I want to handcraft Skyrim, it takes 7 years. Which one is more efficient? So my takeaway for this presentation is start thinking about how you can optimize your design process. In what ways can a computer outsmart you or surprise you in ways that you, as a creative free mind, would not be able to. Things to think about, such as game characters that have characteristics that we tend to base on an archetype because they feel comfortable, they feel known to us. However, if we really want to innovate, we need to start breaking those molds, which means that we don't have a frame of reference, and with a 1% success rate of small indie games that just get pushed out, why not just generate them in general, every single bit of it? If it's a 1% success rate, that means that we're really shitty designers in general. We should all be aware of the fact that we have a horrible, horrible success rate, which means that the computer might just be better at it. And with that thought, I would leave you all tonight.
So after such a very, very interesting topic on how some of your jobs are useless in the future, do you guys have questions for Thomas? Show a hand and please make yourself understood.
Have you thought about balance issues that you might create when you mentally create, for instance, a card game?
So does this take balance issues into account?
For that, I would like to refer to my graduation project, which automatically balances an entire trading card game in one click. It's doable. It's a lot of work, but if you make your base formula of a card game, which, like for example, Magic the Gathering is the easiest frame of reference for everyone, I guess. The mana cost system is basically the one formula that dictates what can be on a card. And if you have that formula nailed down, which takes a lot of iterations, don't get me wrong, this is not a click, generate once, go, and everything's perfectly balanced. But you can regenerate by tweaking that one formula and generate 1,000 cards in the second. And then checking if your balance is still correct. Or better or worse. So you're stuck in an iteration loop till you have that balance correct. And once you have that balance correct, you can start generating infinite amounts of cards. So yes, it is a problem, but you can work around it if you nail down that base formula of your game system.
Are there any others still contemplating their design track? Verena?
Is there anything that the computer cannot do? It's only
human, like create atmosphere or feel in the game.
So is there anything a computer can't generate?
Yeah, is there a limit to it?
Yeah, there is a limit. Currently, one of the biggest hurdles that they're trying to tackle at University of Amsterdam is narrative in general. Although they're making progress in that as well, like even how unintuitive that sounds, they're having generated narratives, which is making slow progress, but they're getting there, which is terrifying, even for narrative designers out there, just saying. Yeah, it's doable. Things like atmosphere is where I think human factor will always be the remaining deciding factor, where things that are generated will always need to be tested against human users. And is part of the iteration cycle in that sense. It's not just, is the balance correct, it's also, do people like what the computer generated? And as long as that step is there, humans will be part of the design process and will always be, essentially, because we're not making games for computers in the end. So in the end, a human will need to interact with it and will say this is fun or not. And yeah, that atmosphere, for example, is one of those indicators of something is fun. And yes, we will be there. So we're all reviewers of games at some point.
And I think we're reaching the end of your attention span, so there's time for one more question.
Yeah, so if I understand correctly, you're basically saying we don't just create a game system, but we create a system that creates game systems.
Yes.
Right? Which is basically a bit like roguelikes. Now my question is this, can you give us an example of something that we can start to dabble with, to start to experiment with the things that you're saying for the non-techies among us?
How would you rephrase that in a short question? for the rest of the
Can you give us a hint of a first step we could take?
So what is the first step in pursuing this design production procedural system?
What I would recommend, the easiest way to do this, how I started with the original card game generator, is make a database, just myself, in Excel, make a database with all the possible mechanics I could think of. Spend 2 hours, write down every possible mechanic you can think of. A fun thing happens where your bias is ingrained in the fact, I think this mechanic is horrible. The problem is that you don't actually know, you just have the feeling that it's horrible. And that doesn't mean anything, because you haven't tested it yet. And the computer is unbiased and just goes like, oh, well, you make a random you generate random results, or you use a die, a d20, and you roll a few times. I don't know, just generate random ones. And see what kind of results you get, and try to imagine how that could fit together in the game. That's the very first basic step that I took to start generating card games, to see if the tool worked. And that gives some really surprising, unintuitive results, which create really fun gameplay experiences because you've never seen them before. And that's where I would start, at least.
I think it's such an interesting topic and very good questions as well. You all deserve a round of applause, but give it up for Thomas.